Hello, I'm Sarah, the Skeptical Witch. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me here. This is a place where I like to talk about all things to do with skeptical, non-theistic witchcraft, as well as the psychology of magic and so much more. Today's video is going to be all about imposter syndrome. So what it is, how to cope with it, and 3 spells that I use for dealing with imposter syndrome in my own life, and that will hopefully be helpful for you as well if this is something that you suffer from too. This is a video that I've been thinking about making for quite a while because it is something that I do struggle with on a daily basis. But Kellyanne Maddox also recently put out a video on imposter syndrome. That's an absolutely fantastic video. I would highly recommend you check it out. I'm gonna leave it linked down below if you haven't seen it already. So her video on this kind of pushed me to record this one and to put out kind of my thoughts and opinions on imposter syndrome and the kind of magical ways that I deal with it personally in my own life. So if you want, grab a beverage, a snack. I have some lovely green tea here, and we can just have a little chat about imposter syndrome and how to deal with this. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is first and foremost the inability to internalize accomplishments. So your accomplishments, you always feel like they come from an external source, whether it's just luck or help that you had from somebody. You can't really own your own accomplishments. Imposter syndrome is also really about feeling like an imposter. It's about feeling like a fraud in certain situations, feeling like a fake, feeling like you don't deserve to be doing what you're doing, you don't deserve to be where you are, feeling like you are going to be constantly found out in this situation. People are going to uncover the fact that you are just faking your way through things and you don't actually know what the heck you're doing. It's very strongly linked to feelings of self-doubt, to feeling like you are completely unable to ever live up to expectations, like you'll never actually amount to anything, and that anything that you've done in the past has just been luck or has been, somebody else helping you. It's not actually been you that's gotten you where you are, and you really shouldn't be where you are. Imposter syndrome can be at times completely debilitating, and it can arise in a multitude of areas of life. So it can arise in work, in school, it can arise in social situations, family situations, anything like that. Imposter syndrome can come up. And as Kellyanne Maddox pointed out in her video, it can also arise in spiritual situations, feeling like you're not actually the spiritual practitioner that you should be or that people make you out to be. You're feeling that you're not living up to your own kind of spiritual expectations. Imposter syndrome can also come up in the witchcraft context, and it can especially occur, I think, for practitioners of skeptical or secular-based witchcraft. Because we, as these kind of skeptical practitioners, may feel like we're not doing the same kind of magic or witchcraft as other people, and therefore feel like kind of a fraud in these situations. So I know that I've spoken to a few secular skeptical witches who feel like they are a fraud kind of in the greater community because they're not doing the same kind of witchcraft as other people. They feel like they're fake. They feel like they're not actually doing proper witchcraft. And they may have people tell them that as well if they're practicing, skeptical or non-theistic witchcraft. They may have people within the wider witchcraft community telling them that what they're doing is not actually proper witchcraft. It's not actually real witchcraft because it's not fitting in with those traditional models. Imposter syndrome is very often accompanied by feelings of anxiety as well as sometimes depression. And it used to be thought that imposter syndrome was unique to women, especially women in the workplace, but they've since found that this is not at all true, that men can equally experience imposter syndrome as well. Some studies have shown that imposter syndrome is especially prevalent in minority communities, so like racial, ethnic minority communities, as well as the LGBTQ community. And this is because if you feel like you're different from the people around you, then you're more likely to feel like a fraud in certain areas of your life. Imposter syndrome is also especially prevalent among grad students, and entering grad school was really when imposter syndrome started to come up more and more for me. Throughout kind of my grad studies journey, I have constantly felt like an imposter. I've constantly felt like a fraud. I feel like I don't belong here. I feel like I'm not living up to expectations. I feel like everyone around me is so much smarter than me and that I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel sometimes that when they let me into a PhD program, they maybe made like an absolutely terrible mistake because I shouldn't be here. what am I doing here? But the thing is, a lot of grad students do feel the same way. A lot of them feel like imposters because it's this high kind of level of study and we're around so many intelligent people that we can feel like we're not measuring up. Also, imposter syndrome for me is very much tied up with perfectionism and feeling like I need to constantly be doing better than I'm doing. And so I set these impossibly high standards for myself, and then when I can't actually reach them, I end up just beating myself up for that. So then how can we actually cope with imposter syndrome? For this, I would 100% recommend checking out Kellyanne Maddox's video again, because she goes over some really helpful practical ways for dealing with imposter syndrome and kind of getting over it in whatever area of your life that it may arise for you. I think that the kind of most important thing to dealing with imposter syndrome is first to realize that you have imposter syndrome, is first to realize that there is this like imposter's voice in your head telling you these things, telling you that you're not good enough, telling you that you're never going to measure up to expectations. The first step in kind of getting rid of that voice is to recognize it, to acknowledge it, to realize that it's there. I think it's really important to learn what kind of situations this imposter syndrome actually arises for you. What kind of situations are bringing about this imposter's voice? Start really paying attention to that. When you hear this like negative self-talk, become mindful of that and become mindful of the situations in which that happens. Once you've done that, you can start questioning why that voice is there and why you feel like an imposter in these situations. For that, you could do some shadow work as well. I think that shadow work would be a great thing to do around this idea of the imposter. Figure out why that imposter's there and kind of get to the core of that. And again, Kellyanne Maddox has some awesome videos on shadow work, so I would 100% recommend checking those out as well. Once you recognize that you have this imposter, you can also start reframing your feelings. So you can start recognizing the difference between feeling and fact. So recognizing that even though you're feeling this way about yourself, that may not necessarily be true at all. And you can start really looking at the evidence. Are you doing a good job? Are you performing well? Are other people telling you that you're doing a good job and you're just writing that off? This isn't always easy, but it's important to be able to compare what you're feeling to what's actually going on in reality and to kind of give yourself a reality check, like you are where you are for a reason. You're doing what you're doing for a reason. And even though you may feel like an imposter, that might not actually be the case at all. Other people around you might be feeling like imposters too. Another thing that I think is really helpful when it comes to coping with imposter syndrome is being able to reframe your understanding of failure and your relationship to failure. So obviously we're all afraid of failing. Like that's just kind of the human condition, is that we don't want to fail. But if we can reframe our approach to failure and instead see failure as a learning opportunity, that can really help with situations where we feel like an imposter. So I think it's really, really important to be able to give yourself permission to fail. Failure can be a great learning opportunity, and it can also be a really wonderful opportunity for creativity as well. When we allow ourselves to fail, sometimes our mistakes will actually lead to something unexpectedly amazing. So I just want to say that there are no quick fixes for imposter syndrome. This is something that takes a lot of time and a lot of work to kind of overcome. It's something that you will likely always be dealing with and working on throughout your entire life. I don't think that this imposter voice is something that ever necessarily goes away entirely. And it's something that we always have to work to overcome. I know for me, it's come up again and again and again, over and over. And I just have to deal with it every time. But now that I'm able to recognize that this is my imposter's voice speaking and not necessarily a voice that corresponds with reality, I'm getting a lot better at dealing with it. Also, I have used some magical witchcraft techniques to also help me with this and to really help me get over this imposter part of myself. So with that said, I want to share 3 spells that I use for dealing with imposter syndrome now, and hopefully these will be spells that help you as well. So the first spell that I have for you is a cord cutting spell. Cord cutting spells are a staple of witchcraft practices. They are typically used for like getting over a breakup or a toxic relationship. Usually it's about kind of cutting another person out of your life. severing ties with a toxic person or a toxic event, anything like that. It can be just kind of about separating yourself from something that's no longer serving you, something that you no longer want in your life. In this case, that toxic person is your imposter. So it's this imposter's voice in your head, it's this inner critic that you have. So here, your imposter is someone who is holding you back from really reaching your full potential. It's someone who is causing you anxiety and stress. Your imposter is just someone that you don't need in your life anymore. So this cord cutting ritual can be as simple or as elaborate as you want it to be. Really, all you need for it is a cord or a string or something like that and a pair of scissors. In the simplest version of this spell, you just want to visualize yourself and your imposter on either end of the cord and think about severing that connection between the cord. Think about really cutting the ties between you and your imposter. And then as you're visualizing that, cut the cord right in the middle so that it's like separating the two of you. Another slightly more complicated version of this spell is to actually bind your hands or feet together with the cord, or both if you want. Although I think that if you're doing it alone, binding your hands together and then cutting it on your own is going to be kind of hard. So maybe do your feet and then visualize the imposter as the cord. Visualize the imposter as someone who is holding you back from reaching your destinations, from moving towards your goals, from moving forward in life, and visualize that embodied within that rope that's tying you up. And then as you are thinking about severing that tie, cut yourself free and release yourself and be free of your imposter. The second spell that I have for you is an art magic spell. So this is really about getting your frustrations, your anger, your stress, your sadness, whatever it might be that's tied up with your imposter onto the page and releasing that from yourself. I think that this can be a really helpful way of letting go of some of those emotions, some of those things that really have been kind of eating you up inside or tying you up. To release them onto a page or through some kind of artistic expression can be super, super helpful. And it doesn't matter even one little bit if you're good at art or not, if you think you're artistic, doesn't matter a bit. It's really just about getting your feelings out. Personally, I have found collaging to be really helpful for me in getting over my imposter syndrome and really dealing with that imposter. So this kind of started for me back last year and a half ago when I was in like a really low place. I was feeling like an imposter. I was feeling like I really didn't belong in the program that I was in. I felt like I was doing really badly even though I actually wasn't. And I had submitted this paper that I thought that I did really badly on. And then when I got it back, I found out that I had done really well. And it just felt to me like I didn't deserve that grade because I felt like such an imposter. I didn't feel like I deserved to do well. So I was just really frustrated and upset and just feeling all these emotions. And so what I did is I tore up that assignment into a lot of little pieces. I got out my book of shadows, my like collage book of shadows, and I just started gluing things to the page. So I glued that to the page, that torn up assignment. I added on like my transcripts. I added on like pictures of myself from graduation and like a whole bunch of other stuff. And it looks pretty terrible. Like it looks awful. It's not like an artistic masterpiece or anything, but that wasn't the point. The point was really just getting out these emotions and these frustrations and really letting go of that feeling of being an imposter by getting it out onto the page. I'll show it to you here, even though it's pretty personal, but I guess it helps to kind of maybe see other people's processes and what they do. For me, this spell, I guess you could call it, was really important in figuring out that I have tied way too much of my identity to being a good student. So I have placed way too much of my value, of my self-worth on this idea of being a good student. And if I felt like I wasn't kind of reaching my potential or I wasn't meeting the expectations that I had set for myself, it just felt like my whole being was crumbling because of that. But doing this spell, this art magic, it made me realize that like I'm so much more than just a student. My identity is not solely based on the fact that I'm a student. I am a whole person beyond that. Like I have so many different areas of my life. I am so many different things to so many different people. And you know, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that this is kind of the case for a lot of us when it comes to imposter syndrome. a lot of that imposter syndrome might come from the fact that we are over-identifying with one specific area of our lives, and we feel like we need to be perfect in that one specific area of our lives because we're basing so much of our identity, so much of our self-worth on that one thing, on being a good student, a good worker, a good mother, a good parent, anything like that. I feel like a lot of us do this. We kind of forget about all these other facets of our lives and who we are as a whole, and just kind of base our self-worth on this one small area, when in reality, we're so much more than that. Anyway, so this collaging really helped me realize that my identity is so much more than just a student, and it really helped me release a lot of those feelings that I had been feeling around that and around my imposter, and helped me so much. Like, after that, I had so much less anxiety, so much less stress around school and around being a good student and on performing perfectly all the time. It just helped me so much. So it might help you too if you do that for a kind of specific area of your own life. And if art magic isn't your thing, you can also burn stuff, because isn't that fun? So you could also just like burn pictures of yourself, like, at work or something, or like burn a work name tag that you have, or a report that you did for work or something, if you're, overvaluing yourself based on your identity as an employee. You can just burn these things, and through that, release this sense of over-identifying with that one part of your life. Or just kind of use it to get out whatever frustrations you have around that, and whatever feeling of, being an imposter that you have around that. So my third and final spell, no surprise, also has to do with burning things, because if you know me, you know that I love to set things on fire. I think it's just great, and especially in magical practice. So this ritual is about burning bay leaves and also burning a candle. So if you've watched any of my other spell videos, you might know that I like to do kind of burning of bay leaf rituals as a way of letting things go. So for this spell, first of all, you want to listen to that imposter voice. Yes, listen to what your imposter voice is saying, and keep a record of the negative things that your imposter says about you. Whether it's, you're stupid, you don't fit in, you're never going to be good enough, anything like that. Keep a record of those, write those down. Then when you're ready to do the spell, write down those things that your negative imposter voice has been saying on either pieces of paper or bay leaves. I like to use bay leaves just because they burn really well and it looks cool, and it just feels more magical, using bay leaves. So it's up to you. So you want to write these down and then set them on fire. Safely, of course. Always remember fire safety. And as you're burning these negative things, imagine them being completely released from you. So imagine that imposter voice in your head just leaving you with all these negative words. Just visualize all of that leaving you, because you don't need that anymore. Then, as a second part of this spell, you want to think about all the positive things that people have said about you and your work, or whatever it is. You want to think about everything that people have given you praise for. Think about your achievements and be realistic about them. What have you actually achieved? Think about that, and then think about what you really appreciate about yourself. Think about what your skills are, what you think that you're really great at. Think about areas that you excel in, and think about positive words that you would attribute to yourself. Then once you've done that, you can get a candle and some dressings for the candle. So this can be like herbs, oils, whatever you want it to be. And as you're dressing the candle, think about these wonderful things that you attribute to yourself and that other people attribute to you as well. Really infuse this candle with positive self-talk. You might want to carve a sigil into it as well that represents all of these positive traits that you've associated with yourself too. And then once you've done this, burn the candle for a little bit and meditate on all of these positive things. Meditate on your strengths. Meditate on these fantastic things about you. Meditate on the fact that you are where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing. You got to where you are, wherever that may be, for a reason. So think about that as you're burning this candle. And then you can either burn the candle all out in one go, or it might also be helpful to keep some of that candle and then burn it during times when you feel like your imposter syndrome is really coming up again, and during times when you feel like that imposter's voice in your head is getting too loud. You can burn that candle again, and hopefully you will have associated it with all of these positive things that will then counteract that imposter's voice. So hopefully these spells are helpful. I know that they've been helpful for me in the past, so hopefully they help you as well. And just remember that you are valued, you are worthy, you are where you are for a reason, right? Like, even if you don't feel like you're in the right place right now, you got there for a reason. Before I go, I just want to mention that I have a new channel, a new YouTube channel. It's called Sarah Lisbeth. I'll put the link for it down below, and this is basically just going to be my grad school channel, I guess. So I really like making grad school vlogs, and I want to make some kind of advice for grad students and just like university students in general, because I feel like I have a lot to share after 8 years of university. So I have a lot of fun making those kind of videos as well, and I just want to keep those separate from my like witchcraft content. So that's the place that I'm going to be posting those kind of videos from now on. So if you're interested at all in my studies, in my grad school journey, and anything like that, you can follow me there, as well as just kind of like what I do on a daily basis. I don't know if that's interesting to anyone watching, but yeah, I have that channel, so subscribe if you would like to. And you can also follow me on Instagram at skeptical.witch if you want to see more of my witchcraft content and also grad school content kind of tied in together, more just of my daily life. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your likes and comments and subscribes. It's absolutely wonderful to kind of see this community growing here and to be a part of the skeptical witchcraft community on YouTube. So thank you for that. I've been really enjoying getting to know some of you in the comments and kind of learning about your own experiences, your own struggles, and the way that you've been kind of overcoming challenges in your life and using witchcraft, whether skeptical or not, to help you with that. So that's absolutely wonderful, and I am so blessed and so grateful for all of these wonderful discussions and meeting some wonderful people online. So yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Have an absolutely wonderful, magical day. Bye.